Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just 1 minute. Sorry, we're a minute late this morning. Frankly, it's miraculous that we can get this thing going every Monday morning, or most Monday mornings. It's miraculous that you all show up too. Miraculous that we can do all of this on Monday mornings. All right, let's see. Sandra, would you please give Spanish interpretation instruction?
Hola, buenos días a todos. Por favor, si necesitan interpretación, váyanse a la caja de herramientas donde están los 3 puntitos que dice MORE. Escojan su idioma, español si lo necesitan, y ahí pueden ver o el globito o la palabra que diga español. Back to you, Izzy.
Thank you so much. You all should see language interpretation available. Click here to get started. Pop up at the bottom of your screen. Please click that and choose the language you prefer, either English or Spanish. All right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Early Care Connection. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Today, we have our resident panel of experts, Meryl Gay and Ava Bermudez-Zimmerman. Of course, we want to start with a thank you to Sandra for providing interpretation for us this morning. A reminder that if you have technical difficulties or want to talk with the community here, the chat is the right place for that. And if you have questions for any of our panelists, the Q&A is the right place for that. Before we get started, I want to just remind everyone that next week, in honor of Labor Day, we will not be meeting. So I hope you all can have a restful day celebrating the incredible labor you all do and everything that makes us all just keep going as a society, honestly. So, so no meeting next week. Today, we've got the Office of Early Childhood on to talk about to clarify a memo about staff credentialing. And so actually, I believe, Elena, are you here? We had thought we had Commissioner Bai on this morning, but there was some confusion about that. We've got Elena Trueworthy, who is wonderful and is here to help us understand this better. So welcome, Elena.
Great, thank you so much, Izzy. And I know some of my colleagues from the OEC are coming on as panelists as well, but excellent. I'll kick us off right now. So I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. My name's Elena Trueworthy. I'm the Deputy Commissioner here at the Office of Early Childhood. I know that I spent my Saturday at a wonderful event hosted by Bridge to Success, connecting with families about the importance of early screening and detection and the wonderful supports available in communities as well. And I also know now is the time of year for many, many transitions happening, both personally and professionally, as you welcome new children and families into your programs and transition others out to new opportunities. And personally, school starting for many children this week. And I know that I send my oldest baby off to college this weekend. And so it's just exciting times overall. So I wish everyone smooth transitions during these times. Commissioner Bai is not able to join us today, and she sends her apologies, but she is at an exciting event for a preschool teacher that she has known for many years, who's receiving a Teacher of the Year award at a convocation this morning. And so we're here, and I'm here with a team of OEC staff, including Deb Flis, who is our Co-Division Director for Quality Improvement and ECE, along with Deb Adams and Margaret Gustafson as well. So we're going to kick you off with a little bit of an overview. We want to accomplish 2 things today in our time here. So the first is we want to continue to review where we are with the Blue Ribbon Panel kind of process and timeline, and highlighting some important events that are going to be coming up in the weeks ahead. The second is to, as Izzy mentioned, highlight some important messaging that went out to the field on August 14th, regarding the workforce and teacher qualifications as well. And so the OEC team will do that in just a moment. Deb, can you please share the first slide? Excellent. So this should look familiar to many of you, but this is our timeline. And as you can see, we are moving and inching closer towards our December kind of deadline. So to remind everyone, the Blue Ribbon Panel's charge is to submit a 5-year strategic plan to the governor for childcare. So 5 years, and we are still and will continue to be very much in listening mode. We are listening to all of you and to others in the field and other stakeholders as to their reflections and their thoughts and their feedback to the draft recommendations and where they stand now. We thank you because we know there have been many times in which you have already provided feedback, and we thank this group for helping to share messaging regarding that as well. But very important is upcoming, and the week starting Monday, September 11th, there will be multiple opportunities for the field to get together both in person and virtually during the day and in the evening time to share thoughts and feedback as to where the draft recommendations stand currently. So we'll post that link where you can find the dates and times on our website in the chat here for everyone to access. Next slide. So this is a reminder that we have been working within 4 work groups focused on equity and access, workforce and quality, systems, and funding and cost. And so we know that these overlap and connect in a variety of different ways. And so you'll see and know that those recommendations touch upon these areas, but may touch upon multiple areas at the same time. But today we're going to highlight some pieces around messaging around workforce and quality, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Deb Flis.
Good morning. Thank you, Elena. Good morning, everyone. It's really good to be with you. Haven't been here in a while, so happy to join the call again. Today, we're, as Elena said, going to reiterate the major points of the letter that was distributed on August 14th. Oddly, I heard you say October, but it just processed as August for me, so I'm being careful about that. August 14th, the letter came out. The reason that we sent the letter was to underscore the points related to the discussion that was happening in the Blue Ribbon Panel meetings. It's important to note the 3 important points that letter made. First, that no decisions have been made about teaching staff qualifications requirements. Secondly, that decisions that are made about qualifications will include plans to transition the workforce. And thirdly, that we continue to support degree attainment and progression. So those are really the 3 things that the letter stated very clearly for everyone in response to the conversation that the Blue Ribbon Panel has been having. Hold on, I want to stay on this slide for a moment. It's important to note that while no changes have been made, we continue to operate under the current existing statutory requirements. Remember that last year we put forward a simplified set of staff qualifications language that did not survive the legislative process, but we continue to work towards simplification and expect that we will have transition steps that will help you think about how you and your staff can make adjustments to your degree attainment and progression planning as the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendations come out. So today, we want to underscore that we continue to operate under current requirements and that no changes have been made to educational qualifications. We want to highlight for you some resources that are available. And so I'm going to turn over to our registry and staff qualification staff, who are going to do both a brief review of the letter and talk about resources that are available for you. So I'll turn next to Deb Adams.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you today and nice to see some familiar faces and speak with everyone. As Deb had just mentioned, nothing has changed in legislation. So it's important to understand what we have to offer and what we have to support people that are moving towards degree attainment. So the Office of Early Childhood supports degree attainment for everyone. And this is basically what the letter is saying, that anyone who works in family childcare, an OEC licensed center, an OEC state funded center, we are supporting you towards an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and a CDA and 12 credits. Important to note here is this is not necessarily a linear progression. It's not a step-by-step. You can start anywhere. If you feel that you want to jump into a bachelor's degree, start there. You could start with an associate's degree. But if you already have a degree, do not go back to try to get a CDA. For a CDA and credits, it's only really for folks who don't currently have a degree. And that's really important to note. We don't want you to waste time and resources if you already have a degree. But we have supports, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, to help you gain the knowledge necessary if you already have a degree that's not in early childhood. So I'm going to turn it over to Margaret to talk a little bit about what those supports are and what they look like. Margaret.
Thanks, Deb. All right, so I probably have the best part of this presentation because I have the happy news about our scholarship assistance program. For those of you who don't know anything about it, I hope the thing that jumps off the screen at you is debt-free. All right, so the Office of Early Childhood has for a very long time, since before we were in the Office of Early Childhood, operated the scholarship assistance program. And we will pay 100% of the tuition, fees, and textbooks for your CDA credential work or your associate's or bachelor's degree in early childhood education. And I want to really take a minute to let that sink in. Debt-free. So there's so much swirling in the news about student loan debt and the cost of education. We know that there are programs in place in different colleges and in Connecticut, but we will cover whatever is not covered by other grants, right? It's huge. We don't want people to take on student loans, right? And I want to say it again because I have people come back and they say, well, I have to take a class that is my math class or my English class in my degree, and you don't cover that. And I say, wait a minute, that's false. We cover everything that is required in your degree. All right, and the same for the CDA credential. We'll cover the coursework toward the 120 content hours. We'll cover the assessment fee. We also cover one-time renewal fee. And that's part of what Deb Adams was talking about, that degree progression, right? The CDA credential was created back in the Head Start era as an entry-level health, safety, and child development piece, certificate, content. And you were meant to then go on to get your degree. And so that's why we looked at the timing and said, okay, so we'll help you on the path, and then we're going to help you transition. We're going to keep you going if you decide to go CDA to associates or CDA to bachelor's. We'll cover those. As Deb said, but you don't have to start there. Go associates, go bachelor's direct, and we will cover those costs. The screenshot that you see here is hugely important. You're going to go to the OEC registry. The address is at the bottom of the slide, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And on the left menu, there's a scholarship tab. You'll see that I've highlighted the fiscal year 24 scholarship guidance and at-a-glance documents in English and Spanish. That's your place to start. If you're saying, I'm curious, I don't know, what do I do next? It's a document that is packed with information. Don't be overwhelmed. Not all of it applies to you. So if you're there and you're saying, I think I want to do my bachelor's degree, you're going to read through the steps. You're going to look at eligibility on page 3. And then on the subsequent pages, you're going to find your section to find out what you need to give us to show that you're working toward that degree. Our staff is amazing at helping everybody to figure out timelines. We work in sync with you and with your college advisor, if you're a degree seeker, to make sure that everybody has what they need. So we want you to read first. I'm going to say read, 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 and read, right? Because you're going to feel better knowing what this is all about. The second thing we say is make a timeline. So be realistic about it. We've talked to college advisors an awful lot lately about how many folks try to take too many classes while working full-time. We're all going to try to support you to be successful. We don't want you to burn out. We don't want you to have a bad experience. So we're going to encourage you to make a solid, safe timeline. And you're going to do that with your advisor. Third, you're going to upload any necessary documents. Those are all outlined in the guidance and at a glance document. And then you'll be able to apply for scholarship. Once you're approved, you go back, you register with your college for the classes and the fees, or you register with the Council for Professional Recognition, right? And then you're going to, most importantly, number 6, come back to us with your successes. Because remember, the registry is also the place where we are building incentives. And so that's a good place for you to apply later. We'll talk about that on another call when we have more to say. But that's your place. We want you to come back and tell us about these great things that you've done. You'll see, I say again, at the bottom, questions after reading the guidance at a glance. Definitely go to the bottom of any registry page to the contact us. You'll see that we've outlined very clearly who your county lead is. That page also includes other staff. So Ted Young, who is our customer service specialist, is there to help you if you have trouble remembering how to get into your account or uploading documents. He does a great job with technical assistance. But remember, debt-free, right? This is an opportunity for you to have 100% of the tuition, the textbooks, all the fees attached to the college, right? Or your CDA credential covered, no student loan. So happy news. If you haven't used it yet, I saw somebody popping some stuff into one of the, I think it was the Q&A or the chat, saying that they had used it. We have a lot of folks who use it successfully. Please come and join us. And I'm going to pass it back to Deb Adams.
Thanks, Margaret. Yes, you did get the most exciting slide, to be the cheerleader and the money giver. That's fantastic. I don't have money on my side to give. So I think the debt-free is the big message to come across, and use those resources in the registry, right? And so this does apply to everyone. So I'm going to talk just a brief minute about just the OEC state funded programs. Okay, that's the school readiness programs, the child daycare contractors, and state Head Start. All right. And so there's some other guidance for the OEC state funded program. And I want to refer you back to the general policy A-01. There's a really nifty chart in that policy. I refer to it all the time on page 2. That is like, you are here or are you here? And if you are here, this is what you do next. And it gives you that step-by-step what you should be looking at in a degree attainment. And then you can go over to the registry and figure out what you need for scholarship, and visit Margaret's staff and figure out what you need for support from those ed advisors. So that's really the first thing to look at. Go back to that general policy A01 and take a look where staff fall on their degree attainment and what is next, because there's some really important timelines in that document, right? And we talked about the credential, CDA credential. Keep in mind that you're eligible for the qualified staff member status only until June 30th, 2025. Again, degree attainment. So where do you go from there? You can go for an associate, you can go for a bachelor's, you can jump in at any level of degree at that point and visit the registry website to look at that guidance for scholarship. Absolutely. So we are again asking everyone, we are just telling everyone we support degree attainment. Look at that pathway. Now, we know that not everyone has or is finishing a degree that's in early childhood. There are folks that have degrees in many things that are out there doing great, important work on behalf of young children and families. Okay. And we've grandfathered actually many people into the system back in 2015. And you might even hold a Department of Education certification. So we want to make sure that you understand where you fit in this degree attainment, and take a look at making sure that everything is uploaded into the registry so we can help support you in what your next steps may be. And we will have a path for you to gain the knowledge in specifically early childhood content in order for you to meet the qualified staff member status. So, you know, there's a lot of information. We try to make sure that we cover everyone who's possibly represented in the field. So we need to hear from you, and we need to make sure that you have all the great information and making sure that you can access degrees in higher education and understand that everyone can go for a degree, not just those in an OEC state-funded program. This really is for everybody, as Margaret had mentioned, for the scholarship support. So we wanted to bring this to you a little bit in more of a visual form, but the memo had gone out, the letter had gone out, and put some questions in the Q&A. I'm sure we'll have some questions in a moment, but thanks so much for listening to us. And again, I'll cheerlead Margaret and her staff in making sure that you take a look at the scholarship opportunities. That is really, really a key. Debt-free, debt-free, debt-free. I can only say it 10 more times. So thanks. I'll turn it back over to Izzy.
Okay, thank you. So I just posted into the chat that we're in the process of moving all of our old recordings. Everything that's old will still be on the old site. New stuff is going to be at earlycareconnection.org. So in the next 24 hours, we'll have this recording up there, as well as the slide deck that was just presented. So write that down, but if you go to the old site, it will redirect you. So no worries about that. We do have a ton of questions here. Elena, I know you were looking at these questions. Is there anything that you want to start with and address before I just start popping into questions? I don't know if you did. I think you were looking at them.
I was looking at them. I guess I'd like to focus on more of the topic at hand today, and any other questions such as care for kids, we can provide a written update to.
Okay, sounds good. And so there's questions here about Montessori, about getting master's degree, head teacher designation, FCC substitutes and assistants, will they qualify? So there's a whole bunch of kind of unanswered things. I'm going to let you just start where you want to with that, and I'll go back to things you may have missed.
Okay, great. All right, well, and one of the questions is around one of the provider's teachers would like to get her head teacher certification or head teacher designation. Does the scholarship cover that? Okay.
Would you like me to hop in, Elena?
Oh, yes, please. Yep.
Sorry, I started trying to answer some. So most of the questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A or chat are specific to the guidance and at a glance document. So we really do want people to go back, read through that. The very individualized questions will soak up a lot of time here. And in registry, you'll know that we don't like to give very definitive answers without reviewing your individual circumstances. So in the at a glance document, I'm not sure if that was Deb who pulled this up, but this is the page 3, the at a glance. So the first 2 pages give a little bit of information and our steps, what happens if you're denied, we want you to come back around. It gives you information about the terms and when you can apply for certain things. So important to remember that vouchers are good for 60 days for student use. And this helps you to be able to plan your year. So you don't apply for the whole year of courses because things change. We've learned over time that lots of people have a plan of study and you start off going one way and then life happens and you may have to shift classes or classes get dropped by the college. So things change. So, take a look at those pages. And then the third page, this is a place that we commonly refer to as the at a glance. And down the left column, you can identify what your role is and what setting you're in. So for example, the very last row at the bottom, licensed family home provider, this does include subs and assistants with confirmed employment at that DCFH, at that licensed family home. All right, so very important there. I know that was a question about who's eligible. And then you can see in the different categories what your eligibility covers. You'll notice for licensed family home providers, we don't cover Connecticut director credential fees because those are specific to centers and group homes at this time. But there's detail about each of those things. And then the subsequent pages go according to the categories that we had on the at a glance. So the first sections, 1, 2, 3, and so on, they follow numerically. It tells you what you need to be thinking about, different fees we cover. There's a section on CDA credential fees. So all of that is really important. And then as you get down to this next page, we get into a glossary of terms, right? Scholarship is a whole other world. And so sometimes when you start into it, you'll notice that sometimes we'll remind ourselves we have to slow down and we'll remind you, help you to figure out what it is that you need. So if we talk about application for federal financial aid using the FAFSA or institution aid at the college, those, I don't want them to seem like they're barriers because they're very intentional. That our original funder, Department of Social Services, long ago was very smart. And they said, if there are other grant funds out there, we want everybody to use those first. So if you qualify for federal Pell Grant, we want you to take that because then that means our little pool of money can stretch even further and help more people. And so we'll always encourage you, we'll help you to find what you need. We work with the colleges. The colleges are really great about saying what document is required. I had a meeting with Charter Oak 2 Fridays ago to just go over what the screenshot is that students need. And they do a great 101 for all of their students. We're working with the CT State, the former community colleges, right, all 12 campuses, to talk about what their evidence looks like. So don't worry when you don't understand everything, right? Know that once you get into it, you'll get in a rhythm. You're going to work with your county lead on different things. We'll help connect you where you need to be. But definitely go back, read through the at a glance and guidance document. That's where the majority of your questions are going to be answered.
Do you have a link to that you can post, or can you send me the file to put up with the recording?
Yep. You actually go right onto the registry landing page, and it's the tab on the left that says scholarship.
Can you just post that link into the chat?
Yep.
That would be helpful for folks.
Absolutely.
Then it lives there with the recording. It makes it really easy.
Great. I'll drop them both in.
Fantastic. Thank you. Meryl or Ava, I want to give you a chance also to ask any clarifying questions before I go back to the Q&A.
Okay. Okay. I think it's important to highlight what the differences are between the licensed childcare providers who are home-based and if any differences for childcare center employees. And also, I think it'd be also helpful to highlight the potential benefits for home-based providers who are on the Care for Kids subsidy. The reason I mentioned that specifically, in the beginning of your presentation today, you mentioned the path forward for someone who already has a degree. You don't necessarily need a CDA, but for home-based providers, there are additional benefits, monetary benefits for having a CDA, even if they have a associate's or a bachelor's degree. So if someone could clarify and just add a little.
Sure. So I'll just say that on that page 3 of the guidance and at a glance document, the row that I was referring to, you may have noticed that the family childcare providers have access to the most, and that's because of the SEIU CSEA union agreement, right? And so there are many things in there. I know I was replying to someone who asked a question about NAFCC accreditation, the professional development for renewal and for attainment, right? And so, remember that as you work on NAFCC, they're very specific about what that professional development can be and how many hours can be in which category and whatnot. But you'll see that family child care providers do have access to standalone courses to support their business, standalone courses to support NAFCC attainment or renewal. So there's a lot in there, and that's regardless of whether or not the provider is a Care for Kids recipient or taking care for kids. So hopefully that covers what you're talking about, Ava. But there's a lot of information in there. And the thing about the associate's degree and the CDA credential that you mentioned, so there is for Care for Kids providers a one-time bonus of $500 for attaining the family child care setting CDA credential. We remind people often, though, that your incentive is much higher for the associate's degree in early childhood. People don't realize how much time you spend in getting a CDA credential, right? So in addition to the 120 content hours, which is essentially 3 college courses, right? 3 credit college courses. There's also 480 hours of experience in your setting. They're very specific about what kind of age group and children not related by blood or marriage in the count. So there are a lot of restrictions on that. And then your professional portfolio, which you have to build within 6 months of applying. And you have to have an observation and reflective assessment, and you have to take a Pearson VUE exam. So there's a lot involved in that, which is why, Deb Adams was talking about how we don't want people to go down a path thinking that there's going to be something even greater by getting the CDA credential. It is a basic entry-level health, safety, and child development credential. It's a lot of work. And so while it works for many people, and we have a lot of supports, like that's a great way for so many people to start, we just don't want people to think of it as something that it isn't and go from, oh, I'm working on my associate's degree or my bachelor's degree, but I'm going to just stop and get the CDA credential because that seems like what people are talking about. So caution, kind of buyer beware, make that timeline. This is why our staff talk a lot about making a timeline and understanding what the commitments are, what they want to do, and what their ultimate goals are.
Thanks. Meryl, did you, or Ava, did you have a follow-up?
I see a question here. Those who are getting infant toddler funding from OEC, are they considered state funded? Do they need to meet the state funded staff credentials?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. And if you are, say you have been a private program, you've never had state funding before, you've just gotten this assignment, you've got 3 years to get credentials, to get accreditation if you weren't previously accredited. And by when do you have to have those staff credentials in place?
So I want to comment on the accreditation piece, and then I'll turn back to Margaret and she can finish the answer on the qualifications piece. So yes, to the accreditation requirement, which is 3 years from the start of funding when children actually begin attending the program. And that has been and continues to be the accreditation requirement. So those newly funded infant toddler spaces are in effect newly funded child daycare spaces. Okay, so that's a cleaner way to think about that. They need to meet the child daycare funding requirements. So I'll turn to Margaret for the staff qualifications piece.
And I'd like to turn to anyone else on this call.
Well,
so I honestly have to check about that for the newly funded family child care homes because I don't want to misspeak on that.
Okay, so let me give the brief and overview answer, which is that the staff qualifications requirements apply to those newly funded programs. And it is important to note that as Deb Adams identified in the final slide that we showed, GPA01 has as she calls it, a nifty little chart about where people are and where they need to go. And Meryl, I think the crux of your question is, what do folks do who do not meet those qualifications right now? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So the answer is everything that we've been explaining here today. We are providing supports for degree attainment and progression, and those newly funded programs, as with all the other OEC funded programs, should have staff professional development plans in place for their teaching staff, and those should include plans of study and goals. That has always been a part of that general policy, and it continues to be a part of that general policy.
For some of those new programs who may not be as familiar with the veterans on where you find those general policies, could somebody stick a link in the chat?
Sure will. And we'll also say that the program managers for child daycare, Jen Jones and Rachel Tway Grant, are planning a series of sessions for those newly funded OEC infant toddler spaces. So those folks will be supported by their program managers, in addition to being supported by scholarship assistants and the workforce supports that we have in place. So there will be a lot of hand-holding and step-by-step instruction and planning help for them in order to help them get on this pathway.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to, I know there's a few things in here that we didn't, I want to make sure I'm getting these Q&As here. So is there any plan for the OEC to begin recognizing Montessori credential? Did we talk? I don't think we talked about that.
We didn't talk about it. I know we talk about it a lot at the OEC. So our policy has been to recognize work done for credit from regionally accredited higher education institutions. And so we've passed back a lot of information to Montessori to try to help them to convert to credit.
Okay.
And that's where I think we still are sitting.
That's helpful. Okay, thank you. Let's see. I'm seeing, and I don't think we need to address this, but just as a comment, that it's hard. It's been hard to get your classes. Some people have had previous attempts at coursework. There might be money owed. That you get into this, especially if you don't have a lot of money for this kind of thing and you're working. And so then there could be some backlog, some barriers to re-enrolling. I don't know. You don't need to address that necessarily, but are there pathways? Is there a person they should call to help get out of this kind of quagmire? If you really want to go back and complete your schooling, but there's, you owe a bill, you didn't complete a class, whatever those things are that could be backing you up, what's the best route for someone like that?
Sure, we definitely come across that, and we help everybody on an individual basis. So it's not uncommon for someone to have a balance somewhere that actually may not be their own fault. Sometimes there are errors at the college level, but we can reach out to the college to find out what's happening. This also happens sometimes when a balance is owed and they can't get a copy of their transcript. And we require transcripts for credits earned and degrees earned, because we want to make sure they're not going and doing the same thing over and over again, right? And we came to this by experience, people who had done the same class at 3 different institutions because they kept having balances. That's a horrible way to live, right? We want to take them out of that completely. So we'll often talk to the college with the student to figure out exactly what the charge is for and what the options are. Especially with COVID relief money, a lot of higher ed institutions had an opportunity to wipe clean some balances. And so we've seen a variety of different things happening. Most colleges tend to be really super at saying, let's figure this out, let's move forward. But we definitely don't want to see people doing classes again and again and again. We want you to have that credit and own it forever and use it toward your goal.
And who is the right person or office to contact for that?
Their county lead. So the contact us on the registry page and provide as much information as possible up front, then we'll be able to have a better conversation. Great.
All right. And then I'm sorry, this is a multitasking job that I have, but if I ask some redundant questions, I apologize. Did you go over whether or not master's degrees would be covered at some point?
So at this point in time, master's degrees are not covered. So we cap at bachelor's degrees because our data shows that we have so many folks who need to work toward that point. CDA, associates, or bachelors, and people who are working toward the bachelor's. We were just having this chat in a registry team meeting of saying, oh my gosh, we wish this opportunity existed when we worked in a licensed facility.
Yeah.
To be debt-free, to have everything covered. And so the cost for bachelor's degree is more than the cost for associates or a CDA, obviously. So we're capping out right now at the bachelor's degree, and we'll see what the future brings.
Okay, thank you. Is the ECTC still a pathway?
So the ECTC, I'll start, and I see Deb Adams jumping in there. I'll say it did a great job of doing what it was meant to do, and it had two purposes really, and Deb Adams will correct me if I'm wrong, but one was to help the colleges to get to a common place where we could say that there was a standard that was being met for early childhood degree seekers, and that has worked fabulously, and so that portion of it has been taken care of. The second part of it is legislation got changed. The qualified staff member legislation got changed, and the legislators moved it to any degree in early childhood education, which meant then that we didn't have to have an ECTC specific degree, ECTC approved. We still have folks who are coming forward with those, and that's fantastic. But we don't have the same need, again, because the quality or the content of the degree has met that level, and we continue to get the graduates from that. Deb, hope I got all that right.
You did great. Nope, you channeled me. That's exactly the point. And also our higher education institutions with early childhood programs are now seeking NAEYC accreditation. The community colleges have for years been accredited, and now our bachelor level programs are jumping in. We have 7 of them moving towards accreditation. So that's another layer of accountability and quality within the program. And the ECTC sort of started that trend toward that point. So very proud to say that our universities are going to be accredited at the early childhood level. And the other piece of the ECTC, though, is the individual review route. And we do have folks that continuously come in and are doing their portfolios, and Connecticut AEYC is the manager of that process. This all remains in legislation, and I'll jump back to Elena's first point and Deb's point that the Blue Ribbon Panel, right, is going to be looking at recommendations and making some decisions. And so legislation is going to shift. Policies are going to shift. So we wouldn't be surprised if the ECTC shifted along with the up and coming potential policies around requirements and our higher education achieving accreditation.
Deb, I think you're so right to have raised that and to really bring some of these very detailed pieces back up to the higher level, which is that we must be on a path to simplification.
Yes.
We are committed to a path to simplification, and the details around NAEYC accreditation for higher ed programs are probably not that important to the provider community per se, but it's important for them to know that that process does in fact help us streamline and get all of the institutions on a common path to high quality recognized higher ed degree granting institutions, which is what we need to simplify all of the other details that we have had to work out for the variety of types of qualifications that providers bring to the table.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of detail that the provider community doesn't interact with on a daily basis, but it is what we have to unpack on a regular basis in order to analyze what a provider brings to the table and to help them move forward. And so it's a good time to say, in response to Izzy's question again, your registry ed advisor county lead is your contact, and use those folks to let them help you plan your next steps and help you access debt-free pursuit of additional credentials.
Okay.
And I'd also just like to note that there are Spanish-speaking staff available in those roles as well, in order to ease with access and to assist as well. I mean, I think you heard Margaret just go through example after example, right? Those are the specific knowledge that the staff have and are ready and willing to support with any situation.
Thank you. We have a couple of sort of rapid fire ones. Meryl, did you have something to jump in on?
I saw a couple of questions about staff who have a bachelor's degree in something besides ECE. And what do they need to, if they work in a state-funded center, what do they need to do in order to get to be a qualified staff member? And is there any help for them?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that based on what we said in the letter, which is right now they need to stay tuned and watch for additional information, because we think this is one of the critical points where the Blue Ribbon panel can help us simplify recommendations and requirements to move forward. There are, as you've seen, a number of different workforce requirements emerging out of the panel's work, and they need to address the baccalaureate degree level, especially in terms of how we make next step decisions. We have had funding for the 12 credits, which was the agreed upon, common standard for those folks. And we're continuing to explore that moving forward, and we're continuing to work with the folks at CT State about the delivery of additional credentials. So we've got a new contract in place with them, and you'll see some coursework being made available in the coming couple of months.
Also seeing a question about, can you get a CDA if you don't have a high school diploma?
So you have to have a high school diploma or a GED. There is a process in place for high school vocational training that is a separate process, which has not really taken foot in Connecticut yet. So I don't think that we have folks that fall into that category at this time. So high school diploma or GED.
What if you had somebody who is from another country who had a diploma there, or, certainly people who are refugees from some war-torn place, it's hard to get transcripts.
Absolutely. So great question, Meryl. So two different things there. We have a policy that we use across the State Department of Education, Office of Early Childhood and Higher Ed, for degree translation and equivalency. So for any non-US degree or diploma, so it could be a high school diploma, we have information about that in the at-a-glance and on the registry webpage. We can help point people to that. There are established vendors that SDE and OEC use for that process. So that was the first part of your question around that. The second part about war-torn or conflict zone countries, we have been working with an organization that has some specialty in getting documents from there. It's hard, they have a list of some countries already. So when I say from there, from a variety of different places. The starting point is having something in place so that there is a lead to go off of. And that does get very hard with different places, but this place has worked some miracles, I have to say, where I've listened to what people come forward with, and I'm thinking, I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to get their hopes up, but it's been fantastic. So know that there are resources. It's something that our registry is accredited by the National Workforce Registry Alliance, and it's something that we have conversations about across the nation, trying to help providers who are coming from other countries who can no longer get access to their documents. This also covers true for experience verification forms for head teacher. And we have some places where we had a childcare center in Ukraine that was blown up. It does not exist anymore, but the people were displaced and they were still able to contact a supervisor who could sign the form. So we're helping people to work through things that seem like there may be no avenue, no opportunity. So definitely talk to us, talk to your county lead at the registry, and we will help you to problem solve.
Just time check here. Elena, are you comfortable if we go till 10:30?
Yes, and then that's when we'll break.
Great.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I should have asked you that at the beginning. Okay, is there a minimum number of hours someone needs to be working in a center to qualify for a scholarship?
No,
Okay.
not at this time.
Substitutes, anyone who's working in a center.
As long as they have confirmed employment in the program in the registry, and then
Okay.
at each application, we ask that the staff confirmation be updated by their admin access user within 60 days to make sure that all of the information is current.
Mhm. Excuse me. I just want to acknowledge one comment, which is this is well and good, but once people are highly qualified, then they might need to find a job that actually pays them what they need to survive. And that is a comment on, I know exactly what we're all working on, but I feel like it's probably a little bit of an elephant in the room here. So I just want to make sure that comment makes it into the recording, because it's what we're all thinking.
And that's really good that you brought that up, Izzy, because scholarship alone or qualified workforce incentives alone, they were never meant to be the fix-all for the field. But we do want to recognize, multi-layered strategies. And then also, I'm just going to be a broken record here, debt-free, because we don't want you to be doing the important work in early childhood and then somehow leave college with tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, right? That just adds insult to injury. And so again, scholarship is part of a multi-layered strategy by OEC.
Thank you for that. Question, okay, about the Spanish, just to point you to the Q&A, that CCEI, what is that?
Child Care Education Institute. It's our vendor for the registry and our training.
As a Spanish language option. Great. And then we've had a few comments here of folks who passed their classes and have just had a hard time kind of getting in touch. I think getting in touch with OEC. So again, that's going back to your county lead. Would that be the best go-to on that? Great.
And I'll say, Izzy, just one thing to add to that. If someone really is having trouble, they can always reach out to me. I'm going to ask you who you've been trying to reach and when and how, because we always want to know if there's a problem with our phones. We had a problem a couple of years ago. We didn't know that we weren't getting messages, but people thought they were leaving messages. Turned out we had a real problem. So I can look to see if it's a matter of somebody was on vacation, didn't put their out of office, or we have some problem with caseload sharing. So I'll ask for as much detail as possible so that we make our side better.
Great. There's a few follow-ups here, by the way. Can you clarify? Did Margaret just say any degree is now approved?
Any degree in early childhood education. If they're talking about what I said about the QSM legislation, it changed from being an ECTC approved institution to being any regionally accredited higher education institution degree in early childhood education.
Okay, and then another clarifying question is if you already have an associate's or a bachelor's in some other thing, but now you want to get it in early childhood, does that qualify?
So if you have an associate's in anything, early childhood or something else, we want you to pursue, if that's your goal, we'd love you to pursue your bachelor's degree in early childhood education, and we have scholarship for that. If you have a bachelor's degree or higher non-ECE, we want you to stay tuned, as Deb Flis said, for our announcements about what's coming up next, both from the Blue Ribbon panel and our CT state agreement.
A big picture.
I think it's like, it's just important to continue to highlight kind of what currently is, right? And the supports available through the registry, receiving information, understanding kind of people's situation currently as it stands. And then the opportunities to really think about what should be or what could be, and having that be kind of what we need to hear and want to hear at the Blue Ribbon panel kind of feedback sessions starting September 11th.
Great, yeah, and the link to those are in the chat a little earlier. I know Eloisa posted them. Eloisa, if you're still there and you can repost them, that'd be great. I can get to it if you can't. Big picture question here. Do you have information on the number of graduates with ECE degrees from Connecticut colleges and community colleges in the past 3 years? How are we doing? That data that exists?
I'm
It
flying to
is-
Deb Adams.
It is data that exists. I don't know that any of us can quote it off the tops of our heads. I think it's fair to say, yes, we of course track and look at that data on a regular basis. It's also fair to say that COVID and the ensuing effects of COVID had a tremendous impact on what that data tells us what we all know. People were deeply impacted. They were challenged to continue the tracks they were already on. And the number of people who joined in new engagements was also affected by COVID and its impacts. We are in a conversation with the higher ed institutions about that. And this new agreement that we've just put in place for CT State is one of the ways that we will help the provider community get increased access to courses to help get folks, increase the number of folks who are on those tracks.
Yeah, and I think something to keep in mind is that the OEC only collects the data pertinent to OEC. So if you want to take a look at all of the graduates in any of the tracks that higher ed has towards an ECE degree, that really is the Board of Regents and the Office of Higher Education for the private colleges. I do have some data from, I think, a year or two ago, but that's a simple call to those entities to ask those specific questions of the data person who runs those numbers. There was a dip. We were curious about the COVID effects, hence, any federal funding that could be directed. And there was a huge dip in terms of graduates. And I think we're still seeing some effects of that as they slowly get back up and running. But we don't hold the data for number of graduates from all of our institutions that offer early childhood degrees. Those would be the governing entities of the public colleges, which is the Board of Regents, CSCU system, and then the private colleges, which is the Office of Higher Education. And that's a data request.
Right. Right. And then it begs the question of how many of those graduates are actually working in this industry.
Correct.
And to that point, there's the question of, is there any requirement to actually work in the field if you access these scholarship funds?
So yes, as I mentioned before, you have to have confirmed employment in an eligible setting. So go to page 3 of the guidance and at a glance document to check that out. There's information there about confirmed employment in the registry.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, because it's been a clarifying one, is does this mean it's not important to complete or earn an ECTC? Are there benefits still to earning it? Just kind of like we can end on figuring that out.
Yeah, the folks that are in colleges in their degree paths with an ECTC, finish your path, because that is your early childhood degree. It's one and the same. It's not something different. You just get an extra little thing called the ECTC within your pathway of your degree program. Okay. For the ECTC individual review route, if you're already involved with it or want to jump in, go ahead and do that. It's a portfolio piece, but the blue ribbon panel will be making recommendations. And so there will be probably a shift in both of those types of programs.
Right. Okay. Thank you all. I know we still have, a bunch of open questions. I know we can't get to everything, but really grateful for this team being here to help clarify. We'll post as many of these links and documents on the recording as possible, but I'm sure there will be some follow-up questions. There always are. If it's helpful, I can send you the chat and Q&A file so that you have anything we didn't get to. There was some Care for Kids, some other stuff in there. And everybody have
a definitely send the chat and Q&A and we can respond written at a future date. And just thankful for everyone on this call for the questions that are being asked. Very thankful for this team and their expertise and knowledge around being able to answer those questions, and just want to reiterate the support that we have at the OEC in order to help people move through and dialogue and decide as to how to continue their pathway.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, and we have more to talk about, so don't go anywhere. We are gonna shift now to a little bit more blue ribbon panel. And before we do, let me just say, I'm gonna post into there were some great comments today. And I think some of that, if you can go to any of the blue ribbon panel meetings and give your comments about, great, they now have degrees and we can't afford to pay them. It doesn't help us any. Wonderful. If you can't, you can also go to I'm posting in the chat right now, there is a feedback section of the Blue Ribbon Panel website where you can type in your comments if you're unable to go to one of the meetings. But of course, your in-person virtual presence is always best. So if you have comments or questions that you want to get to OEC staff, you can post them in the Q&A, and anything that goes into the Q&A, it won't go answered, obviously, from this point on, but I will forward it on to Office of Early Childhood staff. So feel free to continue to put your comments and questions into the Q&A as we finish. And I'm going to turn it over to Ava and Meryl to talk more about the Blue Ribbon Panel.
Morning, everyone. I know many of you have been able to participate in Blue Ribbon conversations, but some other of you have probably no idea, and maybe today was the first time you've heard of the phrase Blue Ribbon Panel. So just to do a gut check and see what's on people's mind, who has heard of it, who's participated, I'm going to put a poll on the screen. It's been a long time since we've done a poll. I'm going to review that poll with you. It's a little long. It's just content we need to go through it. So I'm going to review it while you answer in live time. So the first question we want you to answer here is, prior to today, have you heard of the Blue Ribbon Panel? And then all these questions are translated in English and in Spanish. So the first question is a yes or no. Prior to today, have you ever heard of the Blue Ribbon Panel? The second question, do you think you have a clear understanding of what the Blue Ribbon Panel is supposed to accomplish? So basically, do you know what their recommendations are? Do you know what the impact of these recommendations will have on you and your childcare work, be it center director, childcare owner operator, center staff, home-based director, owner operator? Do you know what this is going to do to your reality and what it's about? That's number 2. Number 3, have you been able to go to a Blue Ribbon Panel sponsored listening session or sharing session and shared your feedback, share your story, either a comment, a suggestion? Have you gone? Have you participated? That's number 3. Number 4, would you like to share your story and or feedback? If you've gone already, then great, you can share again if you'd like to. If not, then definitely let us know that you haven't gone. So that's pretty self-explanatory. The number 4. Number 5, what matters most to you when it comes, is a big one, right? This is the last question. What matters most to you when it comes to fixing childcare? Now, obviously, in the 3 years that we've been having these calls, and my goodness, 3 years goes by really fast, we've had all sorts of conversations, experts, but I think it's fair enough to say, and speak on behalf of my team members here and all of you, that there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, right? I think that's a fair comment. So if you had to pick some top 2, top 3, really important stuff that you would want to prioritize. And of course, on the list on the screen, there are some things missing, some really important ideas, but I just put some of the ones that I've heard in my time working in childcare, I've heard pretty often. So what would those top be, and pick your faves so we could have an idea of where your minds are at and how things are going. So those are the questions. And once you're done there, I see people still responding. I wanted to have a little bit of feedback from you all Of course, you can unmute yourselves and raise your hand if you want to. Some of you guys are working, so we can use the chat and have a better gauge of, your understanding and see the results of where this conversation with the Blue Ribbon panel is taking us from a child care educator perspective. So let's wait for you guys to complete. And then I wanted to share with you some highlights of Blue Ribbon panel meetings that are going to be happening very soon, and make sure that you all have an opportunity to participate. And of course, also make sure that your parents that you care for also have the opportunity to participate. So Izzy, I'm just gonna let people like another 30 seconds here. We have almost 50% of you have participated. I know it's a very busy morning. You have the kids, but if you are listening in and you haven't had an opportunity to click on the poll and answer these questions, if there's any way at all, you can grab that cell phone or laptop, get close to it in the next few minutes. That would be fantastic. Having a good understanding of what's on your mind, where are you, allows us in our different organizations to do a better job on your behalf, right? So Meryl, Izzy, and myself, in our day-to-day jobs, when we're not doing early care connection work, we're all about advocacy for families and for children. So your opinions, your comments really allow us to guide this work. Okay. Izzy, I love it. Let's get to 60%. If we can get to 60% participation on this poll, that would be fantastic. We had close to 200 people today, and I know people are dropping off, but it would be great to have, if we can get over 100 people participating on this particular poll.
Why don't
Okay,
I
so I'll
leave
leave
it
it
open
open
for a little while, and you go ahead and give your other updates.
Awesome. So I'll leave it open. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quickly. Let me put it on the page to highlight the other meetings that the Blue Ribbon panel has happening. Let's make sure I have the right one. And I know that Eloisa was here earlier. I don't want to take her thunder. So Eloisa, if at any point you want to chime in and just say some comments about participation in the meetings and the meeting layout, feel free to text us on the chat here and let us know. Always happy to have a Blue Ribbon panel representative in this conversation. Okay. So this is the Blue Ribbon panel page. Elena Trueworthy, the Deputy Commissioner, mentioned it earlier in their presentation when she referred to the website and what they're doing. This is the actual website, how it looks for you and for me and for anyone coming in, right? ctoec.org, we put it in the chat. And when you do a search and you put Blue Ribbon panel, then it lets you see it. For those of you on the call who are Spanish speaking, always remember on the extreme right of the screen, and you can see my little bubble, my cursor, you're gonna see the option of languages, and you can select whichever language you prefer. Just for the sake of showing you guys, I'm just gonna switch it over to Spanish really quickly. Just takes a second. So when it switches over to Spanish, it takes you out of the Blue Ribbon panel section. And then if you go on the top here and you see the options, you can see in the options the different types of notices and the different information sections that they have. And from there, you want to look for the Blue Ribbon panel through this toggle bar. So Izzy, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here. Do you remember when we were talking about this? Do you remember where you found the
third one down?
Sobre cuidado infantil. This one? Oh, because they translated it. Yep. Thank you, Izzy. So just a heads up for those English speakers that when you're looking, usually titles in Spanish are not translated. You just leave it. So if you say it's a label like Coca-Cola, you're not going to translate Coca-Cola. So here they translated into Spanish. So it was, my brain had a moment there lapse. So for the Spanish speakers, it's the third one down. So 1, 2, 3, and then it is translated as Listo una cinta azul, and you click on that to open it. For my English speakers, I'm going to go back to English. Original to go back to English. And if you scroll down and you just click on meetings here, visit Blue Ribbon Panel, this is where we want you to get to. So you can select and then it's still, let me just go back to original. We want you to check it out and see the time and dates that work for you. This is extremely important. The month of September is the opportunity for you, for parents, anyone who's involved in childcare and early education, to speak up, to share your story, share your suggestions. This is not just about your hardship. This is also about creating a new system, changing the layout of childcare and education statewide. So you have every right and opportunity in the month of September to go to these meetings in person or virtually, whatever works easiest for you, and then chime in and say, I want to see the state change it, and this is how I want the changes to look like. You can make a demand. Take your power. You have power and authority with your voice, and take advantage of those moments in these meetings. So the meeting times you see here, there's one September 11th, September 12th, September 13th, September 13th. Yep.
The 13th is also in Spanish, and I wanted Ava just to tell you that we do have a hand raised when you're ready.
Oh, awesome. And then September 14th. You will see that for the locations, there's going to be in-person locations in Bridgeport, Waterbury, and Norwich, and then virtual opportunities in 2 of those dates as well. Virtual opportunities is a great place for maybe redirecting parents who have busy schedules and are not available to get to the location. Or if you're a child care educator and you close at 5:30, a little later or even 6, and virtual is like the only way to go, then that's, take advantage of that. For the in-person, I know the times are not ideal for any of you. If you have the ability to ask a substitute for Bridgeport between 12 and 1:30, to ask a substitute to be there, then please come in person. If you know that the parent might be available between that lunchtime, then please come in person. For the 12th, I know that it doesn't end as late as we would like to for a childcare schedule or a parent schedule. But again, 5 to 6:30, that 1.5 hour window gives an opportunity for any provider, any parent, any advocate to chime in. And for the Wednesday, the 13th, 2:30 to 4 in Norwich, same idea. So please come and participate. And then let me just stop sharing so we can go to the question.
Hey, Georgia, you are welcome to jump in.
Hi, good morning, guys. I guess after reading all of the documents, there's some highly troubling things that I see in the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendation. And listening to the OEC's panel from prior, it is clear that OEC is going to take a lot of the directives from the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendation. I guess the most troubling, well, there's lots of troubling things in the Blue Ribbon Panel recommendation. I guess the most troubling thing for me is that even though we are here speaking as a collective and we're supposed to be working as a collective, this Blue Ribbon Panel has essentially said that they're only proposing to fix the salary and wage and compensation issue for state-funded programs, which even their acknowledgement is that represents 15% of the workforce. And so there's two places where the Blue Ribbon Panel is basically suggesting that wages will be addressed. Expansion of preschool in the public school will address some of the wage issue for staff, and addressing the compensation for state-funded programs will address the compensation for staff there. And so for the rest of the 85% of the industry staff, there is zero recommendation, zero help, zero proposal. So that to me is one of the big concerns. And then the second big concern I'll lift up is that it seems like they're suggesting that they're going to be shifting Care for Kids money to cover the cost of raising compensation for state-funded programs. That I still need to get clarification around, because in the document itself, it says Care for Kids funds can offset the increases, but it did not suggest that there is going to be additional increase. Now, I know that this is just draft recommendations, but that's what's in the recommendation right now. And then the other big concerns that I just want to lift up here, because there are others, is that OEC is proposing, or the Blue Ribbon Panel is proposing, a secondary governmental agency for the system. And so while there is 85% of this industry who does not have a plan for the next 5 years for how we're going to raise their compensation, there is a recommendation to create another governmental bureaucracy that's in essence sounds like it's going to be functioning as some sort of a state Board of Education for early childhood education, which then lifts the decision-making from the local level to a regional body that's going to be appointed. And presumably those folks are going to be making 6 figures and above. And so for me, those are the two things that I want to lift up here. There's lots of other things that's disconcerting about what the Blue Ribbon Panel is proposing, but I'll stop right there.
Thanks so much, Georgia. Meryl or Ava, I want to give you guys the chance to respond to that. I mean, I think that the purpose of this whole thing is keep peppering them with comments, right? But that would be that's my first initial response.
So I wanted to encourage everybody to go and take a look at the documents that Georgia was referring to. On that Blue Ribbon page, there are presentations that each of the subcommittees made, and in a couple of cases, issue briefs written for those subcommittees. We don't know whether the full Blue Ribbon Panel will accept those recommendations in whole or modify them, but it gives you a sense of where each of the committees' work has been. And that's the thing that we all need to get a clear understanding of. There are some, there are questions that have been raised about some of those things. And we do need to figure out. Sometimes things are open to interpretation, and we come at things from the lens of our own prior experiences. Someone might have written something talking about regional school readiness councils in places that don't have school readiness councils now, and that might be interpreted as something completely different if you haven't experienced school readiness councils in the past. So we need to all dig into this information. I had a question actually for Eloise, if you're still on. Looks like the first presentation is in Bridgeport and it's in person, and we don't get to a virtual presentation until sort of later in the week. And I don't have that. I'm just trying to find my, here we go. I can probably share my screen. This one. Okay, too many things open here. Okay. Public sharing session. So there's one in Bridgeport.
Eloise is still here. Eloise,
Okay.
I'm going to promote you so that you have the access to speak whenever you'd
Yeah.
like to speak, okay?
So I'm wondering, is a set of recommendations going to be posted on the website and then there'll be various sessions, or is it that there's not a virtual session to see in English until Thursday the 14th?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Yeah, so there will be, so make sure actually that I put this in the right chat to everyone. There will be, like, the draft outline will be online so that people can view it in English and in Spanish, and we're hoping to add Creole too if the time permits, so that people are able to see this. Different groups are able to get it out to their networks too. So long story short, yes, it will be available.
Okay. And then, so there'll be a couple of in-person sessions on Monday and Tuesday, actually third on Wednesday. And then you have 2 virtual sessions on Wednesday and Thursday as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
If I could just take a moment to speak to the times, because I know that some people are like, oh, some of those times don't really work for people, but for providers, but just to remind people that we are looking for input from providers and others. So parents, business owners, really, I mean, we're all stakeholders in this. That's why this is important, to make sure that people understand that you don't just have to have children of a specific age in childcare or be a provider to be a stakeholder in this whole thing, in this whole process. Anyone who lives in Connecticut and contributes to our economy is a stakeholder when it comes to this issue. So we wanted to make sure that we had times throughout the day also and throughout the state, just to be able to give everyone the opportunity, especially because our other public sharing sessions were exclusively online. So that being said, I mean, if you know, for some reason we're not getting the attendance that we would have hoped or anything like that, there's always room to add and to find other ways to get feedback. But that's just, you know, why it's, you know, not all in the evening, or we just really wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to give to everyone.
I think that's a good segue to my next comment. The Coalition Childcare for Connecticut's Future has been tackling a lot of these big picture conversations on funding and what policy could look like for early care and education, what restructuring the care system in the state would look like. And even prior to the Blue Ribbon Panel existing as a coalition, we were having that conversation. So in the next few months, the Child CCFCT Coalition will be tackling the very hard conversation of what does funding look like in order to pay for all of these wonderful programs that we would like to see happen. If you would like to be part of those conversations on, again, that big picture, what does funding, how can we map funding, please let us know. I'm going to put into the chat our link, so you can sign up for those meetings and be part of that conversation. They're pretty robust dialogue on what the future looks like. And again, we're always depending on your feedback, your participation, parent and providers, in order to make sure that we're taking a path forward that makes the most sense for all of you. Don't forget the meetings. Please participate in the meeting. Share far and wide. To echo Eloisa, anyone living in Connecticut is a stakeholder in this conversation because it's affecting you somehow, right? Taxes, your neighbor's kids, your own kids. If you care about what early care and education look like in the state of Connecticut, you should definitely chime in at these public sessions. I think that's all I had on my end. I'm just going to go ahead and put the CCSDT Coalition website, but Meryl, Izzy, I'll pass it back to you guys.
Okay, I just was wondering, Eloisa, do you have a day you expect that the Blue Ribbon draft plan will be posted?
Sooner rather than later. We definitely want it there as soon as possible to give people a lot of time. And yes, I will send something out. I just wanted to actually say something really quick. I put it in the chat, but I thought it would probably make sense now that I can speak to say it in case someone is, there are people that are working and may not be able to read the chat. But we will have flyers that we're going to be sending out soon so that everyone can, sorry, is that link not right? So everyone can send it out to, again, other providers, parents, really anyone in the community. So that will go out to the ECU list. It'll be on the website. But yeah, we hope to have the plan outline very soon.
Okay, and Eloisa, you should look at the chat, and Joanne Kelleher had a note about a broken link on the Ribbon page.
Oh, I guess I should make one last plug for the poll. So the poll is still open, our poll here right now, live time. The poll asking you about, what do you want for priorities in the childcare system, as well as have you participated in Blue Ribbon panel meetings. We are 5 people away from reaching 100 people. So if you don't see the poll on your screen anymore, there's going to be a little arrow on the tippy top of your screen, cell phone, laptop, or tablet. And in that arrow, it should be facing downward. You should see the words poll in progress. You click on that, it'll reopen the poll on your screen. It'll cover our faces, maybe even cover what we're sharing. And then you can go ahead, fill out that poll, and then click the word submit. Oh, we're at 96 people. Oh, we're so close. 4 more people away from reaching 100 people participating. Again, if you don't see it, check your toolbar, check the top part of your screen, look for the words poll in progress, click the arrow, click that option. It should open the full poll. You look at the questions, answer each question to the best of your ability, and then go ahead and click submit. Okay, 98 people. Maybe in the last minute we have 99 people. We might reach 100. It's kind of exciting to have this many participants. We will share the, we hit 100. 101. I'm fully satisfied, Izzy. I'm going to stop talking. We hit our goal. Back to you, Izzy.
Okay, so she seems to have stepped away. Why don't we close the poll and then review the results?
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. And the poll, 102. Okay. So in live time, you should see right now on your screens, we're sharing the poll results. For question number 1, before today, have you ever heard of the Blue Ribbon panel? 87% of the people on the Zoom today said yes, they have heard of the Blue Ribbon panel. Only 14 people said no, they haven't heard, or 87 people, 86%. So only 14 people haven't heard of what the Blue Ribbon panel is before. Number 2, do you think you have a clear understanding of what the Blue Ribbon panel is supposed to accomplish? 50%, 50-50, 51% and 50% say yes, and 50% say no. Number 3, have you shared your story and or feedback with the panel already? About 26 people, so 26% said yes, 75% said no. So we're going to change that today because we put a really strong plug out there saying, hey, get out there and share your story. Number 4, would you like to share your story? 28% said yes, they would. 72% said no, they don't want to share a story. Maybe it's that they don't want to share again because I wasn't that clear. I didn't separate those questions. For those of you who said no, just a blanket no and haven't shared, again, this is affecting your life. This is affecting your money. This is a plan for the next 5 years. If you don't chime in and you miss that opportunity, in 5 years when things are completely different and you're not satisfied, you can't cry over spoiled milk if you weren't even part of the conversation, right? And the last question we had here, what matters most to you with fixing childcare? Most of you said salary. Then the runner-up was health insurance. I'd put the third runner-up here, 44 people said free education for professional development. You know, the next one after that was streamlining the payment system. So back to like how you get paid. Then the one after that is streamlining the application process for parents. And last was more clients. So I know I left out on many types of programs, options, and details that are important to you all, but we as a team, you know, when we were discussing what are important things that have been mentioned, what you see on the screen have been highlighted to us by all of you in other meetings. So I'm going to stop sharing here. We're at time. Thank you all for such a robust conversation and participation as always. We are off next week, correct, Meryl? We're off next week.
And on the 12th, we've got a interesting presentation from Allison Logan, who's been with the Bridgeport Baby Bundle and is now working with Janice Grundell on a project called 359, which is about using data to improve outcomes for young children across the state. And it is based on the old ready by 5, fine by 9 work that was done 15 to 17 years ago, looking at preschool and layering in the work that's been done in Bridgeport and Norwalk and some other places in Fairfield County, looking at developmental screening and why that is really important as far as making sure that we get kids on track. So they will be explaining that on the 12th. And then
awesome.
we have also looking at a presentation on the child care facilities grants for expanding infant toddler care. Probably the following week. We just need to confirm all of that.
See everyone on the 12th then, and have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.